Welcome to Default Profitable, the show where we take a deep dive into the strategies behind starting and building a consistently profitable business. Whether you're a founder, a leader, or a curious builder just starting to dream, this podcast is it's really a toolkit for putting profit at the center of starting a business and not just hoping for a lucky outcome. I'm your host, Matt Nettleton, and today my guest is Danny Bobrow. Did I get that right?
You sure did.
Excellent. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Let's start. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Matt.
Excellent.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, we've talked for 2 or 3 minutes, but why don't we start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Well, absolutely. The story starts in 1957, but I don't think we need to go back quite that far. I became an entrepreneur, honestly, at that point in my life, I wasn't really employable, and we could delve into the reasons for that.
What does not employable mean in your case?
I was very good at testing and getting hired, but not so good at staying, at being retained. And as I said, we could get into the reasons behind that. They're somewhat relevant to my rate of success subsequent as an entrepreneur because, yes, basically when you become self-employed, in one sense, you exchange one set of headaches for another set of headaches, but they're your headaches. And that alone is something that I think argues in favor of being an entrepreneur. But I was a struggling marketing consultant for a couple of years. Basically, my niche was anybody whose check cleared. And subsequently had a conversation with my younger brother, who was continues to be a practicing dentist. And he said that, and I'll quote verbatim what he said. He said that dentists are dying out there. Now, most people who look at the dental profession think that they're all wealthy and have it on easy street, but dentistry is a tough business to make a profit. Overhead often runs rampant, and generating new patient volume is not a foregone conclusion. I come from a family of dentists, and my father was a dentist. And, up until I'd say the 80s, you did pretty much, just because of the supply-demand relationship, you could more or less hang a shingle and grow a practice. But things became more competitive as more dentists entered the workforce. And my brother correctly identified in 1989 that there would be an acute need for marketing consultants to help practices not just attract quantity, but also quality, to be selective with the type of patient that represented a fit for their practice. At the time that we started working together in July of 1989, marketing was a taboo phrase. It was a dirty word in healthcare marketing. And now you can't open a trade publication without marketing being festooned on almost every page. But 'twas not the case when we started. That's basically how I got into the dental marketing niche.
So you said a couple things that were really interesting. One was the unemployable comment, which I think is always interesting because being self-employed, I am also, and have been since 1994, unemployable by anybody else. And I think one of the things that business owners feel like they're on an island is because they're the only unemployable ones. And that's just not true because we're all unemployable. We all have our quirks and the way that we want to do things. What was it that clicked in your mind from, hey, I'm not doing well working for other people, to I'm just going to do this for myself?
Well, one way to say it is that after what my last employer said to me, I found it impossible to work for him another minute. And if you want to know what it was you're fired.
Yeah.
I don't want to generalize my situation necessarily to everybody else. I am an intelligent individual. I mean, as I said, I tested well and I was accepted into Mensa. So I have a certain level of intelligence. And I could easily rationalize in my mind, well, that's why I'm smarter than everybody else, so I can't work for people. But that really is not honest, in my opinion. I think a lot of issues had to do with perfectionism, a great deal of anxiety that is probably clinical for me, which made me very uncomfortable. Just the feeling of a lack of control over my own destiny, which sort of by definition is what an employee is, because an employee can be terminated through no fault of their own at the whim or of the economy or their employer. And so I think that created a lot of anxiety for me. But, on the plus side, being self-employed means you can create your own destiny. And I know you mentioned that, and the name of your podcast is, Default Profit. Profit, of course, is essential. But I find that what has really helped me look forward to going to work every day was the sense that my work is about more than profit. I mean, my initial motivation was absolutely profit. It was more like trying to avoid getting evicted from my apartment. All right.
Yeah. I think we all start out liking groceries.
We do. And so one piece of advice that I give to a budding entrepreneur is to check your ego at the door in many senses. One of which is you don't need and can't afford anyway a fancy car or a lavish office. For the first several years of my work with my brother, I was working off of the dining room table in my apartment. And so we would, meet with clients remotely. Actually, I was a little bit ahead of the curve in that regard. Everybody meets with clients remotely now, it seems. But we used phone, mail, and fax to communicate with our clients because we were a national firm. And I think that actually helped me with my communications because, what I'm doing currently is coaching people on persuasive communication. That's the direction that I've chosen to take. But when you're dealing with people on the phone, mail, and fax, according to Albert Morabian's study at UCLA, with which you may be familiar, he identified 3 essential components of effective communication. And those are the verbal, the vocal, and the visual component. And the visual component, which is otherwise referred to often as body language, is largely absent when you're communicating via email. Or even right now, I mean, you and I are looking at each other so we can pick up one another's body language to a certain extent, but it's not quite the same.
Correct.
And that required me to really focus on and master, to the south at the risk of sounding arrogant, the vocal and verbal components of communication. The words you choose and how you choose to use the words that you choose. And so that's served me well in my career as well. And, the other thing I had to overcome was this insecurity, which led to, this desire for control, which I think in turn led to a lack of patience. So I've learned to be, I'm, an adventure athlete and a mountaineer. And so I know how to put one foot in front of the other and not quit. So I'm pretty good at persistence and resilience. But what I've learned is to be successful, it said, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. So I've had to learn to be patiently persistent and respectfully resilient. And that means really working at the pace of your employees, your team members, your prospects, your current clients, and your vendors. And that's what served me well, albeit it took me a long time to learn that.
So let's go back to that beginning. I guess 1989 is when you kind of took the jump. The business idea was pretty clear cut, right? We're going to market dental offices effectively. And you already had experience as a marketer. So that was kind of set up. But what were the things that it surprised you that you had to learn?
Generating leads was something that we got help from an outside consultant on, and it helped me understand what motivated people. And again, our lead gen was solely direct mail at the time. There was no internet.
Right.
And so we were very clear in crafting a verbiage and a presentation that was asking a very easy question, which was like, would you like to take advantage of all the free advice offered by what we called ourselves then, the American Dental Company? And so that was the lead gen. And then I came up with a script to call people, which was that I know you're busy. The idea, frankly, was that we did want to offer free services to help, as I still do today, is I try to demonstrate my established credibility by demonstrating my knowledge and ability to help somebody and my willingness to show them how to do it themselves. But then most professionals, being focused and specialized in what they do, will make a decision, at least a certain percentage will. There'll be some do-it-yourselfers. But at some point, many of them will say, well, you know what, you seem to know what you're doing, and this is something that I think I could learn, but I'd rather not.
Right.
So why don't you let me know what the deal is to have you do this for me?
Yep.
And we'd let some time pass, and I would call people, and I had a very brief script, and we sort of understood what the price point was, which is that to broker lists of new residents, which is all we were able to do at the time. That's all we knew. We were glorified list brokers, but we were focusing in the dental profession. That I would let them know. I would say, look, I know you're busy, so I'll be brief. What we do is work with our dentists, what we do is work with our clients, all of whom are dentists, in helping them connect with and communicate with people who are new to their area, because people who are new to your area will need a dentist for themselves and their family. So in that one sentence, I kind of said, respectfully, if you'll give me a minute of your time, I appreciate it. This is what we do. And then I would just ask them what zip code are you in, and what are your surrounding zip codes? Because we didn't even know how to identify them at that time.
Right.
And we were closing 25% of the people I reached, because they'd give me I had a printout of every zip code in the country. I knew what zip code they were in, so I was already at the right page. And I would say, all right, well, had you been a client of ours last month, you would have received 128 labels, sticky labels, and we charged 25 cents a name, and your budget would have been $37.62. And most of them would say, well, that's under their accountant's radar. They're not going to say, well, why did you buy this service?
Right.
And they would hand me their credit card verbally, over the phone. So
Wow.
what I learned from that is that you got to be simple, you got to be respectful, and you've got to really be quick, because dentists are busy. You're lucky if you get through to them anyway.
Yes. Yeah. That's awesome. So you did that for how long was that your primary focus?
That was my primary focus for about 2 to 3 years, and we grew rapidly. But what I realized was, I have, as you know, I've got 2 MBAs, and I didn't get all that experience to be a label pusher. And frankly, what we found was that there was a fairly high level of client turnover, because frankly, these labels, if they became anything other than expensive paperweights in their office, they would not know what to do with them. So we rather rapidly, this is where my brother and I diverged, which is why I bought the business, because he was a dentist. He continues to be a dentist. And his vision was to basically generate a passive income for his, so he didn't want to complicate things.
Right.
But I wanted to be a consultancy that actually delivered value to our clients. And so we got involved in design and print and not just information procurement, and then tracking. And in the course of tracking, we learned every step was a step with identifying what the next weak link in the success chain was for our clients.
Right.
And that's what led to me develop my telephone skills mastery curriculum, because I realized that we were getting the phone to ring, but once we had the tracking technology, and people would say, your program's not working. And then I find out that, well, they're blowing the leads. Their team don't know how to convert the calls into kept appointments. It's
funny. I made a comment before we got on. My wife's in marketing, and a lot of my clients have been in marketing. And one of the consistent conversations we have is, what happens if your marketing works? Because it's so often people are like, well, marketing's the problem. And then you watch what they do when they have an inbound lead, and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure marketing is not the issue here.
Right. If anything, stop wasting your money on getting the phone to ring. And that was sort of the premise of my TAFI program. TAFI is short for the art of first impressions, which is that we can show you how to double, triple, and quadruple your return on investment from marketing without spending an extra dollar. All you need to do is convert more of the leads that you're already generating.
Yes. Yep. So at what point did you switch to primarily, it looks like primarily art of first impressions and phone skills?
Well, we always used that as a differentiator. And not in all cases, but in many cases, it's a loss leader. Because again, and what I loved about this was that it made sure that our goals were congruent with that of our client, which I think is another important factor of growing a successful business, is that you should never be at odds with your clients. We knew that it was in our own interest that if we were going to, I mentioned earlier, we had high turnover. Well, my vision was, well, if we can demonstrate to you that you're getting a positive ROI from our program, why would you quit? So my telephone skills is a form of enlightened self-interest. I get the client to convert more appointments. They get a higher ROI on my service. They continue my service.
Right.
So I didn't really abandon one for the other. I supplemented one with the other.
So let me ask a question. When you go back to 1989, did you start with any type of strategic plan? Or was it we're going to do what seems to be the most common sense thing available, and then we're going to add and change as we go?
Yeah, the latter. We really responded. I mean, I anticipated quite a bit, which I think people appreciated, but we didn't. See, it wasn't my business. My brother started the business. So he had his vision. And then by early January 1st of 1993, I realized that we were going different directions, and I bought the business from him because my vision was rather different. But what I've done is tried to understand the perspective of my client, which we subsequently we've for decades referred to as health partners. Because our vision and our strategic plan now is to help improve the health and longevity of people of the United States, which is our client base. So that's our vision. And then how do you implement that vision? Well, that's our mission. How do you implement that? Well, you want to connect dentists with the public, but then you also want to educate the public about the value of good oral health. And then I realized, well, you know what? We need to actually educate our clients about what the true value of oral health is, because there's a concept which you may have heard of called oral systemic health. And I mean, it's sad to say that even at this stage, it's often the case that the consumer of dental care is more aware of the links between oral health and overall health, and the links between nutrition and overall health, than the health practitioners who serve them. And so in 2010, I helped found the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health, which was about educating more the professionals than the public, although that was also under our umbrella, our charter, to demonstrate the links between oral and overall health and what to do about it, how to recognize that you can reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease and dementia and diabetes and preterm birth weight by practicing certain protocols and diagnostics. So that's been my passion.
All right. And that fits into the market that you were working in, which is kind of interesting because it sounds like you've really got three legs to the stool there.
Yeah, we've actually got more, because an additional leg was my founding of the Dentist Climb for a Cause Foundation, where our goal is to bring to bear various resources, volunteers, financial, supplies, and equipment to fund oral health education and treatment projects overseas, which in turn can be a very effective form of marketing for the practice. It's called cause-related marketing, which you may be familiar with. This is where you associate your work with a worthwhile cause, and the goal of supporting the cause is to support the cause. Any financial benefit to your business that inures as a result of your support is incidental, but also unavoidable, because people given a choice will prefer to work with a practice that demonstrates social responsibility, especially if it's something with which the cause resonates with your patient or your market, whoever it is. So I'm a big advocate of cause marketing. And again, that helped differentiate us because people said, all right, this guy is more than just a marketer that wants my money. He's committed to my success and he's committed to giving back to other people, which is all true.
So let me ask you a question. We're similar in age, so we've got a lot of experience, but clearly you've had people that have come to you and said, hey, listen, you got 4 significant, successful businesses. What advice would you give a new business owner, or what advice would you say, hey, here's something you need to think about?
Well, I've touched on some of it, and I would, glad you're asking me so I can articulate it perhaps more clearly. I mentioned checking your ego at the door.
Yep.
Profit is important, so you want to understand, how to manage overhead. But what I found, and when we grew most rapidly, I didn't pay much attention to the books. I was focused. I was in the trenches, focused on growing the business, generating clients, and making connections everywhere possible. And then, obviously, you need to price things so that you're not losing money. Yeah. But at the beginning, your overhead should be fairly low anyway, and it's something to manage. But my biggest advice is what's going to drive you is to believe in what you do and not just do it as a means to an end. And what I've learned again later, because there's a lot of platitudes out there, but they have a lot of wisdom in them, which is that it's better to give than to receive. And I have found that when I really really worked on changing my inner dialogue to where my instinct or reflex, instead of thinking, how does this benefit me, is how does this benefit you?
Yeah.
And it not only does the money follow, because people understand and respect and appreciate that, but it really makes me feel better about myself. I mean, I volunteer a lot. I'm going to be going overseas for 2 weeks to volunteer. And I try to do that every year. And the big secret is that you get more than you give. And people like working with people like that. So even when you're focused in and maybe feel a little bit against it financially, try to keep the big picture about humanity, which is, what legacy do I want to leave?
Well, the thing that you didn't mention, but I find so significant, is that you were clear on your mission and vision. And the clearer that you are on mission and vision, because everybody wants to do things that are interesting and difficult, but mostly they want to do things that are bigger than themselves. And that hearing that, you've got the foundation, you've helped dentists, you've added services for dentists, you've thought about your vision, and actually your vision clashed with your brother's, which led you to splitting up. So that was interesting too. And I think one of the things that entrepreneurs aren't good at is clarifying a vision and saying no to everything that doesn't fit.
I think that's right.
And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not at all. And it's a hard thing to do when you're feeling a certain pressure or desperation.
Yes.
But learning to say no is a skill because it keeps you focused.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I hate to do this because it's been a good conversation, but I think we're already at like 23, 24 minutes.
Yeah, me too, buddy. But,
so let's do this. I'm going to thank everybody for joining us on Default Property. Danny, you've been a great guest.
Well, thank you. You've been a great host.
Well, thanks. And for anybody that wants to learn more about Danny, how to get in touch with him about marketing, how to get in touch with him about his foundation, how to get in touch with him about his phone skills, which is, by the way, a freaking lost art, especially nowadays.
We're losing. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 kids. My 17-year-old has texted me from the back seat of the car while I'm driving. But you're allowed to talk, right? I mean,
that's amazing. Yeah. Well, and then there's a certain segment of the population that was raised on the internet and is comfortable getting online. But when you're talking about most services, there's really no substitute for an introductory conversation.
Absolutely.
But to learn more about me, I mean, the easiest way is to just go to dannybobrow.com.
Well, we're going to put all your links in the show notes. So you send over the information. We'll get all that in there for people.
Well, if they want to learn about Climbing for a Cause, I'd love to connect with people, because you don't have to be a dentist to support our work or to get involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. If you're listening still, 3 ways you can help us: leave a review, hit subscribe, or share an episode. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, stay focused, keep working, stay profitable.